My name is Richard Ferrer, and I can say I am cloud hired.
That yes, come and join and get cloud hired. I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
Hey, Go Cloud Architect family. I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired, guys.
So I'll just say I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired thanks to Go Cloud Architects.
It worked for me, and now I'm cloud hired. Because of Google Architect program, I am cloud hired. See!
I am cloud hired. Thank you, Mike and the GlowCloud team.
Welcome, everyone. This is Mike Gibbs. I'm the CEO of Go Cloud Careers, and today I am here to talk about anything necessary that you desire to build your technology career. Maybe you have a goal of becoming a cloud architect, or maybe you have a goal of becoming a security architect, or an enterprise architect, or an AI architect, or any other technology matter. And I've been working in tech now as all forms of an architect, like enterprise architect, network architect, security architect, cloud architect, for the better part of 25 years. And I've now spent well over 2 decades helping people just like you get your first tech job, get promoted in tech, and people I've worked with and coached and trained now work at Apple, at Amazon, at Cisco, at Google, and IBM, and Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Barclays Bank, JP Morgan Chase Bank, Zscaler, Netspoke, Palo Alto Network. So I've trained so many people, and I just want to help you. So please bring us your questions so we can assist you in your technology career, because that's why we're here. We come at least once a week, or at least we try to come completely free and guide you. So you don't have to make mistakes in your career. You know where to go, and you can get to your goals a lot faster. Before we can begin answering any questions that are there, I want to tell you about some very big things that I'm actually excited about. The first one is we just launched our security architect development program. We're going to have a completely free webinar about it tomorrow. This is something that I am beyond excited about, but I'll tell you more about it tomorrow. So join us on the free webinar. I also wanted to tell you that we have a completely free cybersecurity bootcamp next week, where we're going to cover the Certified Information Security Manager certification. And that's something that I'm just beyond excited about as well. A lot of cybersecurity. In the US alone, there are a shortage of 750,000 cybersecurity professionals. In the US alone, the World Economic Forum has been meeting on discussing how is the world going to survive with the shortage of cybersecurity professionals. So, and they estimate between 4.8 and other estimates are 5.3 million cybersecurity professionals that are needed. So it's free. We're going to do that CISM bootcamp on Monday. And I wanted to make sure that you actually knew about it and we also have something that's pretty exciting on Thursday as well, another webinar on the Executive Architect Program, which is a culmination of my entire 25 years of architecture experience, as well as we'll have David Lithicum and some other experts in there to talk about. And that'll be on Thursday night as well for another free webinar. So I've talked to you about some free webinars. I've talked to you about some things that are coming up. So at this point, bring me your questions so that I can assist you in your technology career, because that's all I want to do is help you get to your goals. John Doe, I would like to learn more about your Cloud Security Architect program, which was advertised today. Which are the key skills to learn from it that's going to make one a valuable asset? So what we really have to think about when we think about cybersecurity and we think about architecture is that there's going to be, realistically speaking, two parts of the role. And the two parts of the role are the business and executive components of the role. And the second component of the role is what I call the more technical oriented components of the role. So in our program, we teach both. And when we have our program, we're going to do 4 phases of the program. And the first phase is going to be developing your technical expertise. And I'll tell you what it's going to cover since you asked, or at least a high level of what it's going to cover. Then when we train people, we have to build your consulting skills because an architect is a consultant. If we only discussed the tech and all you had was tech and certifications, you'd never be hired. So we have to get into those business skills. And I'll talk about what they are in about a second. And then we also, at that point, need to get you certified. Now, when we do certifications, we don't waste our time. The security certification in this program will be the CISSP, because it's the king and the queen of all security certifications, the CISM, and the CCSP. And then we, of course, have all of our getting hired skills, which are related to controlling the interview, building your resume, building your LinkedIn profile, answering questions you know, answering questions you don't know, applying psychology and whatever to the interview. So let's talk about the technical components of the program. So the first thing we need to know that if you're going to be a good security architect is that you understand the cloud and the data center, because that's pretty much where all your technology is going to be deployed. So we get deep into networking, private clouds. We also get pretty good into cloud computing, and we get pretty deep in our cloud architectures and principles. So no matter where the systems are, cloud or data center, you're going to be able to work. And that's really important, especially with all these the $500 billion private data center investments. But we always worked on making sure our people could work. So this is for cloud architects or cloud security architects and security architects in general. And here we'll talk about what is security. We'll talk about what is architecture. We'll get into the architectural concepts that are necessary to deal with it. We'll talk about how do you create a security architecture program. And then we'll get into the fundamentals of security architecture, where we'll talk about everything necessary from a security perspective. So we'll talk about network security and how you can design it. We'll talk about data security and how you could work with it. We'll talk about cloud data security. We'll get involved in application security. We'll get involved in security operations. We'll get involved deeply in how to design security policies, incident response procedures, what have you. We'll get pretty deep into vendor management, which is going to be very critical when we're dealing with security. We also get very deep into zero trust and zero trust architectures, because that's going to be pretty heavy duty in today's world. Zero trust, how to design it, how it would need to be implemented, what have you. Now, then we get into the security training, heavy. And this is where we get everything into heavy duty cryptography, legal requirements, governance, and in various world, business continuity planning, disaster continuity planning, physical security, network security, heavy into identity and access management technologies. And I had mentioned security operations, disaster recovery planning, ethics, legal environments. We get pretty deep in here. And not only we cover security, here's where we also cover those 3 big certifications like the CISSP, the CISM, and the CCSP. Now that's the technical part. And of course, how to design the architectures. But see, the architect, specifically the security architect, is a consultant. So because of this, as a security architect, you're going to be giving presentations all the time. And actually, the last part of your security architect interview that you're going to need to get this high-paying job is a presentation. So we're going to make sure you can deliver strong, solid presentations. We'll also make sure that you know how to sell, not only to make sure the client's willing to adopt your architecture, but you're going to typically have a sales component of these roles. But also, when you want to sell yourself into the manager, you need to have good sales skills. So we're going to give you strong sales skills, and we have a lot of training in there. Now, because architecture is a team sport, you effectively, as the architect, have to lead a team of people to help you design an architecture. We're going to make sure you've got strong leadership skills. Now, because the architect's architecture is only as good as knowing where the business is visioned and knowing where the business is going, being able to understand the various stakeholder needs from various components of the business. And if you get that wrong, everything falls apart. We'll get heavy into executive communication skills and how to relate to the C-suite audience. Now, as an architect, you're going to have to be able to build business cases for your architectures and communicate financial things to the C-suite. So we'll get you trained in business acumen and, of course, vendor and stakeholder management. And we'll teach you how to leverage these skills. Now, as I mentioned, the next phase of our training is certification. The primary certifications in this training program are the CISSP, which is the big heavy-duty Certified Information Security Systems Professional. That's the big heavy-duty one. That's like the king and the queen of all certifications for architects. But we supplement it with the CCSP for cloud security and the CISM for the leadership and management. We do actually also provide TOGAF training in the course for free. It's not mandatory, but we like people to understand enterprise architecture frameworks and designing for digital transformation. And then once we get outside of this, after we've done the certifications, then it gets into the getting hired phase, where we'll teach you how to create content to get employers and recruiters to come to you, how to build the brand, how to show that you're an architect versus something else, and how to win the interview, how to control the interview, how to make the interview on your terms. And we teach you all kinds of psychological, sociological, and techniques to do it. And we even teach you how to manage your anxiety along the way so you can perform better. And then, of course, we teach you how to negotiate a higher salary. So these are the things. What are the skills necessary in today's job market, John Doe? They're not how to do skills. AI can do stuff. So here's the difference. I'm not going to be looking for that person, for example, that can basically put the rules in the firewall. I'm not going to be looking for that person. AI can do that. I'm going to be looking for the person that knows where to put the firewalls, what kind of firewall to actually choose, the way the firewall actually works, and understanding and knowing what should be or should not be in that firewall. That's what I hire for in an engineer. The person that's got 30 certifications that can click a couple of boxes, I don't need that on my team. AI can already do a better job than that. So in today's world, what really matters is architecture skills, because AI cannot do architecture. Architecture is about meeting people and understanding a business vision and building relationships and leading teams and all these really great things. So architects never get replaced by AI. But hands-on how to do stuff, like how to write a Python script, how to write a Terraform script, how to write a Bash shell script, that kind of stuff AI can already do today better than the bottom 30 or 40% of engineers. So I wouldn't waste any time investing in those skills in today's world. Great questions, John Doe. Cloud Doctor, hello, Mike and team. What is the best way to get practical cloud architecture experience? You've seen job descriptions that require X amount of experience. So first, Cloud Doctor, let's talk about the concept of a job description. Throw them away. I've never seen a real job description in my entire life. Tyrone, I know you're behind the scenes. If you can provide a link to two things. One is the video that Chris and I did with job descriptions, and the other video is from me and Christina Marino, where she talks about job descriptions effectively being worthless and meaningless. And she's the CEO of a national recruiting firm. But in particular, Tyrone, if you have the link to the VP over at Amazon that actually talked about why the job descriptions were meaningless, where he talked about instead of the manager writing the job description, it goes to the HR department, and the HR department, who don't know what the technology people do, write the job description. And therefore, you get ridiculous job descriptions. Or we write the job description, by the time the HR and finance or whatever people, after they wrote it, are done with it, it's been 3 months. And by 3 months later, we need the person to do a different job. But we don't want to go apply for another job requisition because that'll take months. So there's lots of reasons that job descriptions are meaningless. But let's talk about what architecture experience is versus what architecture experience isn't. So an architectural experience or project is something related to things that architects actually do in their job. So if you were to write a thought leadership document that talked about an industry problem, for example, and some type of a technology or technology strategy that would solve that problem, that is an architecture thing to do. An architect would respond to an RFI, RFP, RFQ. An architect would write a statement of work. An architect would create an architecture which is not a couple of technology boxes, but an entire solution to solve a business problem. So if you're going to do actual something related to a cloud architect project, you have to do two things. You have to make sure that the project is relevant and the project actually shows you as an architect. For example, the best way I could describe this to you, if you tried to tell me that you were a airplane pilot, but you didn't know how to fly a plane, I would be pretty concerned, right? But what if you wanted to prove to me that you could fly a plane, not by having a pilot's license, not by having any experience flying an airplane, but because you had a Porsche, a DeLorean, one of those old cars that came back, 10 Teslas, 3 BMWs, and you could drive real well? Would that prove to you that someone could drive real well without a pilot's license or experience that they could fly an airplane? The answer is no, of course it wouldn't. Well, that's the same problem we see every day when you see someone as an architect that goes out there and sets up a website or does a DevOps project or writes some code or a Python script. They're showing me they're not an architect. So if we look, Cloud Doctor, at what the architect does, and then I'm going to give you an example of why these cloud projects typically don't work, and they often bite the person that's trying to become an architect, is it has to be relevant to the job. So in an architect, I need someone to communicate with the organization's executives, find the vision for their business. I need that architect to be able to map out and understand the way the organization operates or its business architecture. And I need my architect to be able to communicate across the organization, meet various stakeholders from various business units, understand their business needs, and then get their information. I then need my architect to be able to create and lead a team of people that are going to baseline my organization's technology, and then be able to take that baseline information or that information about the technology and evaluate if that technology is going to get that business to its future business goals, solve its pain points and its challenges. And if it's not, I then need that architect to go create an architecture team, a wide variety of team of experts that can look at all of our organization's needs and figure out the network security, the cloud, the data center, the AI, the big data, and the security and every other component of our overall architecture. Now, once I design that architecture, I've got to present that back to some key stakeholders. I need to document my architecture, get the stakeholders' feedback, take my architecture team and redesign it. Then I typically present that architecture to the team. I try to go with the account manager. We sell that architecture to the team. The people say, yes, we create a statement of work. We create a governance structure for the architecture. And as the architect, as soon as it's time to build it, we go off to a new client. So if you understand what we do, anything related to the architect job is great. But let's say you do what I call the ridiculous cloud projects. And here's why they're ridiculous, and they're not going to help someone get a cloud architect job. Somebody, let's say everybody wants to build a WordPress website, and you can see all the interns in AWS that have never worked as an architect. They're always talking about this as a project. So that's why I'm going to pick it. So let's say someone goes on AWS and they launch an EC2 instance and they they set up an Apache web server on that EC2 instances, and they put an HTML web page on that EC2 instance. They connect that thing to an internet gateway. Maybe they put an ACL or security group on the server itself, and pretty much poof, they set up a public-facing web server. Now, what did that person learn in that cloud project? Well, maybe they learned what a virtual machine is. Maybe, just maybe they learned how to set up the web server. They probably did. They understood how to potentially connect it to an internet gateway and get internet routing to work. And they probably had to even set up a DNS policy. Great. Now, here's what I need the architect to be considering. That architect is never going to be setting up that WordPress website. And it has nothing to do with what they're concerned about. Now, when someone says, Mike, we need a website to do something, here's what I'm concerned about, and here's what the architect needs to be concerned about. What are the business goals that are associated with that new website? How will we measure the success of that new website? For example, is it increased revenue? Is it increased customer satisfaction? Is it increased dwell time on the website? Is it greater availability of the website? What are the availability needs of the website? Because that's going to determine what our architecture is going to look like. How many servers do we need? How many requests per second are we going to be getting on these servers? Where is the optimal location of the servers going to be if we were going to get them as close as possible to the main users? What are the required network bandwidth of the servers, for example? What will the server be serving? Static content? Maybe there's a better alternative, dynamic content, or will that server also have things like a LAMP stack where you've got other applications and other software packages in a database even integrated into that server? Now, that web server itself, should we use NGINX? Should we use Apache? Should we use IIS from Microsoft? Now the servers, how many cores do they need? How much DRAM do they need? What kind of latency capacity can we have? What kind of storage needs do we have on the server? Now, how do we lock down the server? What kind of endpoint protection should we do? What kind of services need to be disabled? What kind of those things is what we're thinking about as an architect. You know, how do we design the demilitarized zone where our web server is going to be? What kind of firewalls do we use? How many layers of firewalls? What kind of logging and event monitoring correlation do we need? What kind of identity strategies do we need for access? So I'm hoping that's making you think that the project of how to really teaches you absolutely nothing related to architecture. Now, the key is I love how-to skills. They're still valuable, but that's why when I have an engineer, I need to typically train them to be an architect, because hands-on skills are wonderful and I admire everyone with them. Just please understand that the hands-on skills of building are completely different. And it doesn't matter your background. Noah got his first job as an architect. His last job was a social worker. Jennifer E. was a mental health tech, but JP Morgan Chase was more than happy to hire her as a solutions architect. Al basically was a sales rep hired by Deloitte as a senior solutions architect. Ivan Tamba, he won't mind me mentioning his name, hired by AWS, first tech job out of college, working as a waiter as a solutions architect. Pierre over in Canada was a sailboat operator, but he got his first job as an architect. Don't worry about job descriptions. Worry about getting the good skills. You have the skills, you can get hired. I'm seeing people get hired all the time that it's their first tech job. Good question, Cloud Doctor. Also, also between the cloud architect and security architect, which is the most rewarding job? That's going to be personal. And I'll tell you why I say this. It's going to be really related to what do you really love to do. So for me, I love security. Why do I love security? My whole life has been built around it. You know, I studied martial arts for 30 years of every single kind. I trained a lot of people in the security world because I thought it was interesting. I like protecting things. I like protecting people. I paid my way through school by being a first responder, paramedic, firefighter. So, you know, my whole life was involved in that protection. And even when I practiced internal medicine, it was still about protecting life, protecting. So most of my life has been in protecting things. For me, security is near and dear to my heart. Now, the cloud architect role, I love, especially if you do it more of that cloud enterprise architect, where you're really focusing on that business and focusing on that organization's needs and leading the teams, because you can make a massive, massive, massive impact on your clients that way. And so I like that too. Honestly, Cloud Doctor, there's never been an architect job that I've had that I didn't like. I've been a technical architect, which that's not true. That was more of an engineering role, and I didn't love that, but I still enjoyed it. And then I took my first principal solutions architect jobs, for example, and I kind of enjoyed that for a little while. And then after my principal solution architect job, I moved into enterprise architect roles, which is really what my favorite was. But I had lots of those networky security principal architect roles early in my career, and they were fun too. John Doe, you saw news about an investment from the CEOs of Oracle, OpenAPI, ABank, and data centers. Does this mean there will be a spur in AI jobs? So, John Doe, and actually I have a video I'm going to release on this tomorrow. But let's talk about what it really means. There were a lot of messages that came out yesterday in that announcement. First thing is $500 billion towards AI. Now, if you listen carefully to that announcement, Trump had said that means a real estate boom. And you also heard him say data centers. What does that mean? That means these systems are going to be built. They're not going to be going to some public cloud provider, assuming what we heard yesterday was accurate, although I'm sure some of it will go to public cloud providers. We are now talking about the U.S. government and other industries with a $500 billion investment in data centers. So what is it going to take to make Gen AI work, to build something of this infrastructure? Well, it's going to take people that know a couple of things. One is going to be enterprise architecture. enterprise architecture will be a huge winner here. Massive number of enterprise architect jobs to try to get some business value out of $500 billion. So that enterprise architect will be looking at the end to end, try to be thinking everything from the data centers that will be involved, the networking things that are going to be involved, the compute, the storage, the global, everything. So we're going to need a tremendous number of enterprise architects. Now, once we get past the enterprise architects, John Doe, in order for any of this AI stuff to work, we have to have the infrastructure. Now, John Doe, what does that mean? Well, that means we're going to need the people that can make private clouds. Why private clouds? Because it sounds like most of this is going into the data center. But when we go to data centers, we don't just do old school data centers where you've got your servers and they're all separate. All data centers now, for the most part, are hyper-converged. And you'll find the multi-cloud architects like the kind we train are constantly designing private clouds. So that means organizations are going to build data centers. And these projects that build their data centers, they're still going to want things like a function as a service, like a Lambda function or an Azure Server function, because they're just great. Architecturally, they can help in so many ways. The other thing that we love about modern cloud computing is the application virtualization. Now, it's not specific to cloud computing, but just upload your code and it runs on servers that you don't need to think about. Again, we can do this in private clouds with OpenStack, Nutanix, even VMware type environments. And businesses love that. The other thing that businesses really love about cloud computing is the ability to just pool resources and add capacity and reduce it at no time. But we heard real estate, we heard data centers. So that means that these environments that are going to be there are going to be often private clouds that are going to connect to public clouds. So multi-cloud architects like we've trained at Go Cloud Careers for the last 4 years, 5 years, and we only trained multi-cloud because we knew this, are going to be a huge beneficiary of this. Network engineers and network architects are going to be a huge beneficiary of this because nothing works without the network. And you can't build a cloud without really good networking people. That's why when people think cloud computing is new, it's not. Networking people like me have been working on various clouds since 1993 and even designing many of these clouds. So, you're going to have a lot of good networking people, which means strong network architects that are going to design these solutions and also network engineers that are going to build them. Strong engineers, not the technicians that know a bunch of commands but don't know the protocols. I'm talking to people that understand the protocols, how the technology works, its pain points, its tuning points, its optimization, its breaking points. Boom, lots of people there. We also will need compute people, storage people, and all that other back-end stuff. So again, this is a big boom for other compute professionals. Super excited by this. Now, $500 billion in of investment. Now, let's talk about $500 billion. Imagine if AI, with the amount of data that this environment is going to hire, imagine if this stuff gets out or AI gets weaponized or used by a hacker. It could make the Terminator movies of the late 80s and 90s look like nothing. So obviously now we need a massive, massive, massive number of security people. That means security architects. That means cloud security architects. And there's already a shortage of 750,000 cybersecurity people in the US, and it's just going to get a lot worse. So think about that. Lots of security people that are going to be needed. Now, the obvious is the AI architect and the AI engineer. Lots and lots of them. And obviously we'll need them. But we're also going to need the data to work. So that means big data architects. That means big data engineers. We're going to need really good machine learning engineers, really good data scientists. So we're going to need a lot of those people too. Now, here's the last part of it. We will need people to write the code initially for these AI systems to run, but for the most part, AI can generate its own code. What does that mean? It means on the development and DevOps side, we don't need the average ordinary person that's got 20 certifications that knows a little bit about a lot of things. There's no need for those people in these environments. And the reason why is AI can already do a better job. We will need the top end engineers from a coding perspective, the people that can see things and connect things and be efficient with their code and catch errors in code. So we'll still need those, the best of the best. And of course, we'll need application architects to design the applications. And potentially, in addition to security architects, IAM architects. But yeah, so there are a lot of big jobs that are going to come here. But it's not just Gen AI. It's all the stuff that makes Gen AI possible. And I think we also see a lot more technicians come back. See, if I'm a cloud provider, you know, I may create a certain number of jobs, but I'm sucking jobs away. And here's what I mean. If a cloud provider has 1 million customers, potentially those 1 million customers don't need their own data centers. Potentially. They do have them, but they might don't need them. So what happens is when you aggregate many, many customers in a single environment, you need less of those hands-on people to do the work. And that's one of the ways cloud providers can work, is they can aggregate it. So to run your own facility, you're going to need a lot of power people and cooling people and electric people and all these hands-on type technicians. When you outsource it to a cloud provider, they need less of these people per amount of compute unit because they've got very efficient systems and automation and others. So if we're dealing with $500 billion of this, it's going to create a lot of those more technician-y jobs also in tech. So lots of great jobs to come out of it, but it's not just Gen AI, although there'll be a lot of AI jobs out of it. And I'm super excited about that AI architect program that David Lithicum and I created together. You know, I've only worked with AI systems for 20 years, so I consider that a newbie because David Lithicum's worked with it since 1985. In fact, his AI knowledge and capabilities were so good that he got a job at NASA in the 1990s based on his AI capabilities. So I'm really proud of that program. Great question. Let's go to the next one. Do the live classes for the training have a start and end date? Samantha, as a general rule with our program, when we have a program, we have two elements. We have live and we have the non-live training. And typically speaking, we give people a year in the live classes and we let people stay in the non-live training, which includes recording of the live classes, as long as they need until they are hired. And we don't have dedicated hard start dates and end dates for this reason. I want people to buy our program to get a job in the end. We are not a boot camp. I will never be a boot camp. A boot camp is when you take people's money and 16 weeks later you say goodbye and they don't have a job and you don't know if they're ever going to get a job. I don't want that. I want people to take our course and I want to change their life. So the people take our course, they stay on our course until they're hired. So no, there's no official end date to our training. Graduation for us is when you have a job. Because if you learn, you're taught the right things and you don't quit on your learning, you should be hired. So we're not going to quit on our students if they don't quit on us or quit on themselves, I should say. So no real hard end date for any of the non-live classes that are associated with the program. Typically about a 12-month period of time in the live classes. Although if someone needed a little more, they could just send us an email and we would look at it and evaluate it on a case-by-case basis. I hope that makes sense. And please, if it doesn't, please feel free to ask more. Dingleman, how in-depth is the security program compared to the Cloud Architect Career Development program that you took? A lot more. So that Cloud Architect program you took was designed for cloud architects. This is a specialty security architect, so it's pretty much 100% focused on security architects. But Dingleman, since you are a member of our program and you did get a great job after our program, for the security, there'll just be an add-on for you. And I would strongly recommend it that'll get you out of where you're at, which is a great security engineering position. And I think that'll move you into the terrific security architect position. I really do. And I highly recommend it, Dingleman. Exclusive, please tell me, sir, is a career upgrade from a DevOps engineer to a cloud architect a good option? You're starting to learn all of this. Can I give you some good advice? So here's what I can tell you, Exclusive. I don't ever recommend cloud engineering or DevOps engineering careers anymore. Now, if you are a DevOps engineer, I'm going to tell you why this is probably the best upgrade you can do to your career. First thing I want to tell you is that I really love and appreciate great DevOps engineers and great cloud engineers. But I want to make it very clear. AI right now can write a Python script, AI can write a Bash shell script, AI can write a Windows PowerShell script, and AI can kick off a lot of DevOps processes right now. And when I hear the CEO of Facebook say, look, we're going to get rid of our mid-tier engineers, and when I know that Google is writing 25% of their code right now with AI, and you're hearing other people saying it's software engineering, anything in that software development space, I'd be a little worried about. And how worried about that am I, Exclusive? I'll tell you that 2 years ago, we had an awesome cloud engineering program. And Zimcan IT, who's in the chat box, can tell you how good it is because he got him a great cloud engineering job, and he was an honor and a privilege to work with. But I stopped actually selling that program because as much as I love cloud engineers, I'm worried that AI creates more jobs for architects. Every new technology creates a new job for an architect because an architect has to meet with people, give presentations, manage stakeholders, manage vendors, lead a team, all things that are human, which AI can't do. But the AI can do a lot of cloud and DevOps engineering, so I recommend getting out of that. Now, if you go into an architectural role, understand at least that it is an upgrade, but now you're in a customer facing role, you're talking to people, you're meeting people, you're leading, you're advising. Now, because of that, you can ultimately earn 2 to 3 times more in your career as a good architect than you ever could as an engineer, like a DevOps engineer. Because you can move into chief architect roles later in your career that pay a good $800,000 plus a year, and they're not that hard to get if you're a really good architect with really good business acumen skills and really good leadership skills and really good executive presence. These, $500K and above architect jobs are not that hard because there's so few people that have really good architecture skills and business acumen, executive presence, leadership skills. And I can show you examples of a principal architect at Google, for example, is a $508,000 a year job on average. At Microsoft, it's about 378, but the range is 300 to say 500 there. And Amazon, the average principal architect is 372 with a range of like 300 to 500 again. So there's lots of room there for you to grow as an architect. Because the architect is so business oriented and so leadership oriented, it can also be a really good career path to say a VP of either architecture or engineering departments, a chief technology officer, which you may also hear a chief technology officer or chief information officer be called an enterprise architect or chief architect. So it really bodes well into those careers. So it is a great career option. Why don't you come to our one of our architect webinars tomorrow? Tomorrow we're going to talk about security architecture, but if you've got a cloud architecture question, I'll tell you. But 90% of what we're going to talk about as security architect will be the same as the cloud architect. The only difference is what you're architecting. Cloud architect is everything: the network, the data centers, the security, the big data, whereas a security architect would be the security. There's a lot because of the security. Hope that helps, but I think it's a great career, and please feel free to ask more questions. Greetings. Any advices for the ISC2's ISEP prep? So they actually have some training that you can get directly from them, and that's really what I would recommend doing because they make the test. For me, when I look at any of these exams and you really think about it, they're all, how are you thinking? And I can tell you that when you deal with these higher end certifications, like the architect certification that we're talking about or the CISSP, you're going to find this is the way people feel about it. Management love it. The people that do the hiring love it. The architects love it. The hardcore engineers appreciate it. And the hands-on-y, technician-y oriented engineers hate any of these exams. And I'm going to tell you why. And that's the mindset you need to be in to take these exams, and it's going to help you. The mindset of the technician engineer is my only skills are what things I can configure. They're going to be the people that I'm last to hire, and they're going to be paid the least. And I typically don't need them on my team. They're what I call the technician-y engineer. And pre-DevOps and pre-infrastructure as code, we needed a lot of them. After infrastructure as code and DevOps, I don't need people that are configuring stuff without knowing why they're configuring. In many cases, they're actually dangerous. So That's why many of them hate it, because there's no hands-on in any of these bigger certifications. They're all conceptual. They're all minded. So now why do those technician-oriented engineers hate it? And why do a lot of the even good engineers hate the CISSP? Although the top-end engineers typically love it. Well, it doesn't feel hands-on. It's very conceptual. And the CISSP and the ISSAP, they're very business-oriented exams. You know, you're quantifying risk. You're building a principle. It's about a security architecture. It's about a security strategy. It's about a risk mitigation plan. It's about a network security and an application security and a data security and an identity security. It's about putting all these great pieces together. But the key here is this from a business perspective. And that's why the hardcore, well, not the hardcore, but the technician-oriented engineers that love to touch stuff hate these exams, because this is business and everything is in the concept of business, and they don't want to think in business. They want to think in tech because that's their job. So if you can approach, you know, these bigger exams from a business perspective, and you can always associate it with the actual business outcome, as opposed to saying the actual tech piece, you'll be in the right mindset to be much more accurate on these, and you'll do better. So I would take their training, but I always go back to the business. And honestly, that's one of the ways I can help differentiate when I want to hire someone, if I can hire them from an architect role or an engineering role. I ask them questions. And if they get deep into the tech without tying it back to the business, I know they can't work in an architecture role without being retrained to think like an architect, because they're thinking like an engineer. And if they go straight to all the business things, then I have to still make sure they have the technical competency. But if they're always looking at the business impact of this, and they're saying, okay, well, this next generation firewall stack and this and this and this, okay, this package cost me $2 million, you know, to mitigate this amount of risk. What would it cost me to transfer it to another organization? What's the cost of that? And then what's the cost of brand damage, downtime, this and that, and create real business case calculations. Now we're actually talking about some really person who's going to benefit from these exams. So I hope that helps, because that's what I would tell you to do better on these exams. Zamcam IT, it's so good to see you. Hi, Mike, you're a cloud engineer working towards becoming a cloud architect. Wonderful. Your current cert pathway is the AZ305. Okay, that's great. CCNA TOGAF. Would CCNA be required, or does CCNA suffice skills? So, you know, Zam, I think you might want to rethink it at another level. Now, if I have someone that wants to do networking, I'm looking for CCN, somewhere between CCNP and CCIE level knowledge. I really am. But for the architect's ability and strength is their ability to see the big picture, to design a strategic blueprint inclusive of the entire big picture, and to create a positive business outcome. So Zam, I know you. You've got a really good personality. You communicate very well and you brighten a room. That's a lot of what I'm looking for in an architect. Those good communication skills, those good executive skills, that ability to create a relationship with someone, because you're going to need that. Those three are critical skills. I still want to work on your sales skills, your executive presence, those kind of things, and your presentation skills are going to be there. CCNP? No, I don't know. I'd rather see you have the AZ305. I'd rather see you have a TOGAF 10, and maybe even a CISSP. And I'm going to tell you why I like the CISSP so much. I like it because it is such a broad exam, and it is so business oriented and so business oriented focus. And they actually touch so many different parts of the entire global environment, from storage and mobile devices to application types and API type of security to network security to IAM to data security, because they get involved in just so many things. It actually makes you think about things from a different perspective to pass that exam. And I found that to be very good in architects. And since security is critical to everything, and because there's such a shortage of it, you know, Zimcan IT, I'm noticing when I've got people CISSP certified, it's like they just get interviews. I mean, it's like putting a CCIE on someone's resume. It's just that the CISSP isn't that hard. And you don't have to spend a year on it. You know, it doesn't cost you $40,000 to prepare for it like a CCIE. And so, yeah, I'd probably do the AZ305, the CISSP, and have a touch more of the, what do you call it, security knowledge on there. And I'd probably do the TOGAF 10, and that would be it. Because remember, Zam, if you have too many certifications in architecture, you run the risk of looking like a technician. And you don't want to look like a techie. You want to look like a business strategist. So 3 or 4 good certifications, great, but don't go too crazy. But I always love the CCNA and I always love the CCNP because they are the fundamentals of networking, and networking is the fundamentals of everything. Iteris Osborne, upon completion of the Go Cloud careers, how many interviews can a graduate expect to be invited and at what frequency? So, Iteris, I'm going to tell you you're asking the wrong question, and then I will also give you the answer. The reason I say you're asking the wrong question, Iteris, is if you've gone on more than 3 interviews and have not been hired, or anybody has gone on more than 3 interviews and not been hired, there's something wrong. And what I mean by that is either the person doesn't have the skills, which is very possible, or the person doesn't meet any of the other things that the employers are actually looking for, or the person does a bad job in their interview. So anytime I've ever seen somebody go on more than 3 interviews, if they don't have at least just 1 job offer, there's a problem we need to solve. And that's why I say, so I've interviewed with 5 companies. I've been hired by all 5 companies. I interviewed with a few others, and I also received offers. I can't think of anywhere I didn't get an offer where I've ever been on an interview, but I studied the interview. So there's not that. Now, the key with us is the better you are at following our rules, the more people that will come to you. I had a student, Robert W., and when Robert W. followed our advice, he would get interview requests every single day, multiple per day. And I can remember when he first went on, before we had the opportunity to groom him for interviews, he went on a whole lot of them. Then we groomed him on the interviews, and he was able to clinch it. So you won't have any issue getting interviews. That's not the issue. But I don't want you preparing for 50 interviews. If you have to go on 50 interviews to get a job, there's something wrong. I want you to really master and go on 3, 4, 5 interviews and get a job. 5 good interviews, maybe get 2 or 3 job offers that you can go from. So that's what I'm looking for, because it's not can you get interviews. That's nothing. It can. So what most people do, and here's how they get interviews, is they put a bunch of fluff on their resume. And then they get these beautiful interviews. And then what ultimately happens is I'm the hiring manager. I ask the person about something on their resume, and they can't answer it, and the interview's over. So I want to make sure that you know how to do an interview. So if you're with us, you will stay on our course until the day you're hired. Because I want you hired, and I've got a list of people that can show you that. But I'm looking for a mastery of everything we do. And I want to get you to mastery because I want you to have a great life. Please feel free to ask more questions. I really just want to help. K21BBY. You have passed the Cloud Practitioner. Wonderful. You also have an access to AWS Academy Cloud Architecting Labs. Can you do the Cloud Architect Associate exam by first studying theory? So let's talk about one thing. There's no such thing as a cloud architecting lab because cloud architects don't touch the technology. So an actual cloud architecture lab project would be meeting with the client or reading a request for proposal, asking the client questions about their business, creation of an actual architecture, sending that architecture back to the client, presenting that architecture back to the client, getting the client's feedback, re-architecting it, and then selling it, creation of a statement of work, a governance plan, a governance structure. So that's architecture. So what you have access to is cloud administration labs, which is the clicking of a boxes on how to. For the most part, you could literally not leave your house, never touch the cloud, and pass an AWS Cloud Practitioner, AWS Solutions Architect Associate, and AWS Solutions Architect Professional, and never touch it once and never do a single lab, because 90% of these exams are multiple choice questions. So hope that actually helps. And there are a few little hands-on type things, but for the most part, it's predominantly conceptual questions. So you can definitely do the Cloud Architect Associated Labs exam first. Now, I'm going to tell you, there's no theory in any of these solutions architect exams. What there really is the name of what it is and how to configure what it is. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. In an AWS Solutions Architect exam, they'll tell you about an EC2 instance. They won't actually tell you that it's a virtual machine. They won't talk about the underlying servers or the underlying hypervisors or how those hypervisors keep your virtual machine separate from others, how they manage memory, how they manage. Now, that's the theory that you need to understand to be an architect to design these systems. They don't cover any of that in the AWS Solutions Architect training program. What they cover is what AWS calls a virtual machine, which is Elastic Compute Cloud. And then they tell you some of the features and functions of that AWS Elastic Compute Cloud, which is the same features and functions that we've had for the last 26 years now, since VMware came out with a x86 hypervisor in 1999. So they're basically the same technologies. So yeah, learn these, but please, K21 BBY, I want you to get hired, and the certifications are not going to be enough. When you go through these certifications, please learn what the technology is. When they call it an internet gateway, learn what is a gateway, learn what is a router, learn how routers work, what is an internet-facing router, and then that'll make more sense. If they talk about network address translation for a NAT gateway, we'll first learn what is network address translation, and then learn what is static NAT, what is dynamic NAT, what is port NAT overload or PAT, and that's going to be what it's going to take to give you the knowledge. So I hope that helps. But yeah, sure. You can do. You can go take these exams and then do those hands-on labs anytime you want. Anytime you want. If you've got questions, please feel free to bring them in. Otherwise, I am happy to. So I can answer them for you. Zimcan IT, great show, Mike. Thank you. You have an ACA diploma in accounting and business. Great. Is it wise for you to pursue an MBA or a master's degree of AI? Given AI's influence in all sectors. So I wouldn't waste my time on any master's degree of technology. You'll get out of a master's degree in AI, and then you're going to have to learn AI from the start because you're not going to get it in a university. So Zimcan IT, you want to learn AI? I recommend our architecture program with David Lithicum. He'll be covering things that you would never get at any of the AI training programs. Now, for a master's degree, I recommend an MBA. Never a tech degree, and here's the reason why. You can get the same tech jobs with a degree, without a degree. That doesn't matter for these tech jobs. But the big jobs, the chief information officer, the chief architect, the chief technology officer, the chief information security officer, the chief AI architect, that needs leadership skills, business skills, and executive presence. And Zimcan IT, when you go to an IT program and get a master's degree in AI, it's all about the hands-on configuration and the coding of it. The high-paying jobs have nothing to do with that. They're all the application of it. How can I use AI to mine through healthcare data and find diseases quicker, for example? How can I use AI to create a synthetic vaccine after analyzing genomic data from a certain number of people? How can I use AI to help a bank better make price predictions on a stock and create a pre-programmed trading system that's better and more efficient than their competition? That's the job. That's the AI architect, the enterprise architect, the cloud AI architect, and what we're actually doing. That's what we're really trying to talk about. So I would focus all of your effort on the business and what you can actually do with it. That's the job. That's where you're going to have better opportunities. I wish I could say master the tech, but it just, what happens in Zimcan IT, and I'm going to give you the lesson that a manager of mine said to me. And it was almost 25 years ago to the day. And it honestly changed my life. It doubled my salary. And I want to give you this. So I was very honored to get to meet you and work with you to get you your first engineering job. So I think it was 2001, 2002. And I was in the middle of a CISSP training program, and I love the CISSP certification, by the way. And while I was in that training program, I actually fell asleep. And it was a great training program, but I fell asleep in it. It just happened. And when I fell asleep in the training program, I felt this tap, And my manager yanked me out of the room and pulled me to his office. And I thought my manager probably spent $5,000 per person for everyone to take this CISSP boot camp. And I was going to be in trouble or the doghouse in some way, shape, or form. And my manager said something. He said, Mike, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. And given your excitement about today's certification class, I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to have this discussion with you. And then my manager said, you know, Mike, he said, I'm going to give you this gift. And he said, do you know the difference between a $150,000 solutions architect like you and a $300,000 enterprise architect or executive? And I was like, tell me, please, I beg you, tell me, because I always wanted to take better care of my relatives in Greece, my family, my wife, you know, everything. Like I was like, tell me. And my manager says, Mike, you're a CCIE, you're a CCDP. He said, I'm sure in 2 weeks you'll be a CISSP, which I was. He said, enough. He said, no matter what you do, you can't go up in your technology career. Where are you going to go? He said, but there's something special about you that you're not using. And that other stuff that's special about you is the difference between here and a lifestyle that you can't even imagine. I'm like, okay, what do I have to do? Tell me. I was so excited. And my manager said, the world is no longer about you. Mike, it's no longer about your IQ anymore. It's about your ability to build a team and lead a team and your ability to influence others. And I went, huh? I'm a CCIE. And my manager said, look, right now you're a one-man wrecking crew. You're good, real good. He said, but imagine you had a team of 50 people behind you. Imagine what you could do with your leadership. He said, imagine if you understand your client's business so well that you would know which levers you could tune to optimize their performance and make it that they might get 2 and 3 and 4 times out of the technology you recommend for them. I was like, that's kind of cool. And he said, it's your executive presence to be taken seriously. It's your CXO relevancy when you can walk into that CEO and connect with them immediately and give them the elevator pitch about why your stuff. He says, all of a sudden your life changes, Mike. And he said, I promise you it will. And then he said, and when you can learn to sell and convince people to adopt the right solution that's going to help them, by the way, your bonuses are going to get a lot bigger, Mike. So I got real excited. I asked him, could I get training for it? The company helped pay for my second MBA that I did. I went to executive training, CXO relevancy training, and about a year later, I had this huge job. And it changed my life. And when I learned that Zamcan ID, I've applied that to all the people that I've trained ever since. And I watched come to us with a job that paid $142 and leave with a $409,000 job at a cloud provider. And it's all because of this stuff. So I'd rather see you do an MBA. I think it's going to be a big benefit for you. I'd skip the master's degree in the tech, though. Great question, Zam. Please ask more. Hello, Mike. In today's job market, what do you suggest a security architect or cloud architect roles to prepare for? Thank you so much. So you have to understand what security architects do or cloud architects do. So, let me give you a list of some of the things that a cloud architect would do. And if I give you a list of what the things that we actually do as cloud architects, maybe it'll make sense when I talk about the things that you should actually prepare for. Because that's where people go wrong, is they want to study for something. And then what they actually learn is they study the wrong things. So here's the kind of things we do as architects. We give sales presentations. We create future state roadmaps, meaning where do we want to take the business from point A to point B? What are we going to do this year, next year, the year after that? We typically document the way various workflows work in the business. So how does the sales come in? Who contacts what? What are the steps in the sales process? If a product is created, how is the product created? What are the supply chain partners? Where do the parts come from? What systems need to be touched, for example? So we're going to have to map a lot of that kind of stuff out. We are going to have to lead proof of concepts, meaning we're not going to do the proof of concept testing ourselves. We're not going to. We're going to be leading a team of engineers that are going to build that proof of concept for us. Well, we're going to be interfacing with the client. So you're going to have some leadership skills. No, we'll be presenting at conferences, at executive briefings where companies' executives come in. We're going to be presenting to the board. We're going to be presenting to internal stakeholders. So you're really, really, really going to have to prepare yourself for a big presentation. Now, we also have to understand that as a cloud architect, we'll be maintaining architectural document repositories, sometimes they're containing architectural standards. We'll be creating governance structures, who manages an implementation. We'll be crafting and creating statements of work. We'll be determining what kind of training programs organizations need. Do they have the sophistication to be able to handle an architecture, the people to be able to manage and roll out an architecture? If not, what kinds of people and do they need to hire? We'll be creating change management and governance structures. We'll be creating incident response plans, like what to do if if the organization was hacked, who speaks to the press, who speaks to legal, who does what. So that's a lot of what we're going to be doing. We're going to be responding to requests for information, requests for proposal, requests for quote. We'll be crafting architecture documentation, which explains the solution and maps out various workflows. That's we'll be facilitating meetings. We'll be asking questions. We'll be meeting with numerous vendors. For an example, an enterprise may have a few hundred vendors we actually have to deal with, and potentially 500 different applications that we're working with, and 100,000 IP addresses. And, so that's the kind of thing we're dealing with. So it's always going to be coordination, leadership. Now, what skills tech-wise do our cloud architects need to understand? You have to understand that it's never going to be a single cloud. And where people go wrong when they learn cloud is they learn AWS, and they think they're going to be able to work somewhere. 98% of all enterprises are multi-cloud. 98%. And you could say, Mike, well, just what's that big enterprises? And I'm going to say, well, 89% of all businesses are on more than one cloud. Now, what does that mean? What are the implications of that? It means you can't do most of the things that are in AWS, Azure, or Google certification. Now, I can use Oracle's DB across all three clouds. I can't use DynamoDB, Google Cloud Big Table, or anything like that, because now I've got from multi-cloud and it's proprietary, and now I've got to create middleware to make this stuff work. But I can put Apache Cassandra in all databases, but I can't use DynamoDB. So what it means is to the architect is you have to know cloud, not the silly names that the cloud providers call their stuff. And you have to understand how the technology works, how it fits together, and how to design it across more than one company, which means the cloud architect needs networking skills, data center skills, cloud skills, understanding of compute, storage, big data, databases, data scaling databases, network concepts, server virtualization, containers, container orchestration. For example, firewalls, next generation firewalls, VPN concentrators, IDS, IPS systems, SIEM systems, data loss, and how all this stuff fits together. So the key here is to remember this is an executive role. Architects don't touch the technology. Where people go wrong is they try to become engineers and try to build it to learn how to design it, but you never do. When you learn how to build, you learn how to build. When you learn how to design, you learn how to design, and they are very different sets of skills. And if you don't believe me, just look at who designs the hotels, who designs the shopping malls. Why don't they ever hire the construction workers to be the designer? Why do they hire an architect or an architectural firm? They do that because it takes a very different way of thinking and skills to design it than it actually does to build it. I really, really, really hope that helps. What security certification paths do I recommend? So, and let's talk about the difference. I'm going to tell you right now, there is no such thing as an architect certification for the most part that will teach you architecture. If you take the AWS Solutions Architect Professional, it'll teach you systems administration, which has absolutely nothing to do with architecture. Administration is the name of something and how to configure it, like a technician. We don't do that as architects. We design it. So I typically recommend when I'm dealing with a cloud architect, assuming they've had someone train them to be an architect first, because no one is going to be an architect by doing certification. I'm going to make that very clear. Assuming they've had someone train them to be an architect. For cloud architects, I like either the Azure Solutions Architect Expert or the AWS Solutions Architect Professional. Neither of them have anything to do with architecture, but they are very good at getting you interviews. Now, I've interviewed 1,000 people with these certifications, and none of them knew anything about architecture, unless they were trained or worked as architects prior in their life. But you will get interviews with one of those, so I recommend it. Then I recommend you get architecture training to know how to be an architect. I also recommend TOGAF 10. And why is that? Because TOGAF 10 is an architectural framework about how to build an enterprise architecture. It doesn't teach you architecture, but it will give you the steps so that every time you do an architecture, you follow a systemic and methodological approach. Now, it won't teach you how to do each step. That's the architecture training. But it'll tell you, step one, learn the architectural vision. Step two, identify the way the business operates, its business architecture, and re-architect for the goals of the vision of the business. Step three, evaluate the data example, for example. Step four, evaluate the technology. So it's a step-by-step approach, and I love it. So TOGAF 10 and one of the two main cloud providers, and I have nothing wrong with the Google Professional Cloud Architect. It's a good certification. But the whole reason of one of these cloud certifications is not to learn cloud architecture because they have nothing to do with it. It's to get interviews, and you'll generally get more interviews with the Azure Solutions Architect Expert or the AWS Solutions Architect Professional than you will the Google Professional Cloud Architect right now because of market share. And then honestly, I've been using the CISSP as my primary tertiary certification. Every student of mine gets CISSP training in any of the training programs they have. They don't have to take the exam, but they get that. Just the CISSP to me has been magnet training, getting people hired. It's funny. Every time I look at all these people that have gotten security architects in my cloud architect program, which is all the time, they say, Mike, I don't know what happened. I was open to a cloud architect or a cloud security architect position. I put the CISSP and it was like magnet. Everybody wanted to talk to me almost overnight. I said, yes, that's why we actually did these certifications. So we do certifications. My recommendation is to get interviews, but they will never get you past the exam, the interview. You got to be capable. Now, what are my certifications for security architects? It's real easy. It's the CISSP, it's the CISM, and the CCSP. I tend to like that triple combination better than I would of the ISC2, ISSA, the one architect certification, because normally I like going for the biggest one. But I like the way these are here. One's very cloud focused, one's very management focused to give you the perspective of your client, the hiring, the client, the CISO, and the other one is very security focused. So I love that combination. CISSP, CISM, and CCSP. And that is a lot of what we teach in our security architect program. Of course, we also teach the architectural skills, the business skills, the design skills, the underlying network, data center, and cloud skills, because otherwise you won't know how to secure it. But yeah, they're the certifications I highly recommend. Hello, Mike, and thank you. I am in the on-demand program. That explains why I don't see you in class, because I've been meaning to actually talk to you. When you get hired, what can you expect to be a background architect with the company for the first few weeks or months? So here's the thing. You may not be hired as a background architect. So there's two ways that you could get hired. So let's talk about what I mean by this. So I have worked with some people that instead of finishing our training program, took what I call paid training. So like AWS has a program called the Associate Solution Architect program. Cisco had an Associate Sales Engineer program. So I have had a student, Raymond was an example of one, that basically, instead of finishing our entire training program, they were in our training program for 2 or 3 months, and they got an offer to be paid to be an associate architect or an associate engineer. And what an associate engineer is, a paid intern, typically a cloud provider or a telecommunications provider, and they pay you a decent salary to actually learn to become a solutions architect or a sales engineer. And then when you graduate that, they pay you the real solutions architect job. So keep that in the back of your mind. That's what an associate architect is. Now, 99% of my students get real architect jobs, not associate architects. Associate architects aren't full architects. And the only time my students do that is if they don't want to finish the training program. Now, because I've had students like Al go in as a senior solutions architect as his first job, or I've had Wallace Agana start as an enterprise architect as his first job. I don't know that you're going to be a background architect. You might just be there as a full architect. So in that particular case, the key for you to remember is hopefully you have, in many cases, you have a mentor for 2 or 3 months, but you may not. So the key for you to remember in those first few weeks, Elijah, is this is your time to go meet people. This is your time to go build a team. Take people to lunch. Go have drinks with people. Go do all of it. And in that, when you do that, then you'll have a team. So if you get your first architect thing and all of a sudden you don't know what to do, if you don't have a mentor, either go find a mentor and ask someone to be your mentor at the company, or because you've created an architecture team and now you're on your first architecture and you say, okay, if I had to eat an elephant, and I wouldn't eat an elephant, I love elephants, but if I had to eat an elephant, I would do it one bite at a time. One little thing at a time. So I start thinking, now, how do I do it? Okay, I've got a new architecture. All right, this is terrifying. Okay, well, there's a big data component, and I'm not an expert in big data. So who's the big data architect around here and the big data engineer that I need to talk to? Okay, there's some security elements that I really don't understand here, specifically in the world of IAM. Where's the IAM architect that we have as part of this company? Here's the good security engineer for network security. Who's that application security person? Talk to them. Now, all of a sudden, you've got 10,000 remote locations. It's your first architecture. What do? You find your network architect and you bring them and you're actually there. So that's really the kind of key of one of these things that that I'm really looking at for you. So that's how you take it. So will you be a background architect? I don't know. I can tell you when I joined Cisco, it was very interesting. I had been a principal architect at right before that, I was a principal architect at Riverstone. It was the old Cabletron, which then became Alcatel-Lucent and then Nokia. But anyway, when I was over there, I was loving the role. And I remember I joined Cisco and I was there for about a week at Cisco. And I said to my manager, what's your plan for me? Because I've been here for about a week. I've taken everybody to lunch. I've got to meet people. And my manager says, it's good. Keep meeting people. And my manager said, I have no expectations for you, and I don't plan on you doing anything for 6 months. He said, I knew you were a principal architect and service providers, but now you're working in banking. You're probably going to need to learn banking. So go learn banking too. Okay. Now, a week and a half later, I get called into my manager's office. Mike, you're on the most strategic voice deal of all history. I'm like, okay. And he said, I need you to lead this. And I'm like, you do know I know nothing about voice, right? They're like, video, right? I'm like, yeah, videos, IP multicast, there's encoders. I'm like, it has nothing to do with voice. And I got told, go lead it. Now, Elijah, it was in that first architecture where I had no idea where I was going to begin that actually built my career. So ultimately I went, and I said, okay, I know networking, but what about this? Now we need servers. Because these phone switches were running on Windows servers in those days. And then we needed storage, and then we needed quality of service, and then we needed a network upgrade, and then we needed IP phones and call signaling devices. And these things had to click into be integrated into do not call systems and have some computer telephony integration into CRM databases. And I look at that and went, oh. So what I built is I built my architecture team. I led my architecture team, and we won a very strategic deal, and that built my career. So go in there, develop your leadership skills, develop your executive capacities, which is why we're teaching you these things. And you should be in really good shape. That'll help you get through it. Definitely lead it. If a high school kid wanted to take your security architect course, how would that work with summer and winter breaks where the main time is the free time? What about live versus non-live? So, Raj, if I had a high school student that wanted to take our course and they were in high school, I would just keep them in the live program. and let them stay in it if they wanted until basically they graduated, and just extend their classes when they could take it. Because, I've had the opportunity to work with a few people in high school in my careers, and it was really kind of fun. I remember the first time I worked with Mitchell. Mitchell was one of my first clients many years ago. It was in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. And he was in the middle of high school, and I found I'm in the gym one day, and he wanted me to train him. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And then he's like, I want to have a job like you, Mike, where you're traveling the world, and you just got back from Dubai, and then you go from Dubai to England, and then you're in Australia, then you're back in Florida. He's like, I want a life like that. And I can remember when he was in high school, I think he was probably 14, 15 years old. And I said, Mitchell, you come to my house. And I trained him. And, I think when he was 14 years old, we got him CCNA certified, or 15. I can't remember. He was a young kid. And then each year in high school, we did one certification for the CCNP exam. His parents wanted him to go straight to college. So he got straight done to college. By the time he graduated, nobody in his class got a job, but he immediately got a job for one of the world's largest internet service providers. And he worked there for about a year, and then he went on to Cisco and did real well for himself. And now he's a serious security architect working in a lot of security companies. And I'm pretty proud of the guy. But I worked with lots of people. I'm working with another young person in Pennsylvania right now while they're in high school. And this young person's passed their AWS Solutions Architect Professional. I think they have a CCNP already. He's got really good networking skills, and I think it's great. So I think if you've got someone that's young and wants to get motivated, that's the time to learn. I mean, it really is. Learn when you're young. Learn when it comes natural. Be seen as the prodigy. And if anything, what if the young person gets out of high school and gets a $150,000 architect job and someone's willing to pay for their college education? That might not be the worst thing either. So I love working with people in school. I really, really do. I think it's because, whatever we're taught with, it's easy. I've learned things as a child like martial arts. Once you learn a certain way of moving, all of a sudden something's coming at you. You might come in at that, but you see it, and that could be used in one. It could be this way, but your body learns how to move and swat things and see things and sense time and space. And it's kind of the same thing here. When you get started with technology young and your fundamentals are good, any new thing you'll pick up will be easier. Kind of like learning languages. A lot easier learning them as a kid than they are learning them as an adult. But Raj, it's always good to see you. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them. Don't be scared. I don't bite. I do want to help you. Otherwise, I will get back to work. But looks like I have one or two more questions, so I'll answer them. And on Elijah, you said you'd like to speak with me as well. Eliza, send an email to Christopher Johnson. I want to invite you to one of the live classes. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the social media things that I think I can definitely help you with. So send an email to Chris. He will invite you to one of the live classes since you said you're in the non-live program. Let me know which live class that is, and Chris will make sure that it's one that I'm going to be on one, because I want to be able to talk to you about that. I think it's going to be a big help for you. And so there would be that. So, very briefly, going back to the concept of starting things when we're young, because I'm pretty passionate about education and I'm pretty passionate about learning. When we learn things early, they just become part of us. For example, early in my life, I can remember the few things that were really interesting to me. Electronics, for which case I learned very much. Martial arts, which became the foundation of the way I lived my life. Martial arts and yoga, which was the majority of my life. And medicine. And I've spent my life in some way, shape, or form in all of it. So the fact that you've got a young person that's passionate and excited, that's about as good as it could possibly get. Tyrone, if you can go to the next one. After landing your first architect role, would you have any recommendations for making the biggest positive impact in your role? Yes. So the key of how successful you'll ultimately be as an architect ultimately comes down to my favorite African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So in that first architect job, you're only going to be as good as the people around you. So for me, Zimcan IT, I would be so focused on being able to create a good, strong architectural team, be able to find out how to win people's hearts, win people's minds, and be able to have a loyal set of people with you. When I got my first cloud architect job, for example, if I wasn't in the process of doing anything, I would meet people. I would take them to lunch. I would let them know that right now I wasn't on any projects to see if potentially they needed help with something while you're waiting to be put on your first project. Offer a little assistance. Offer something for someone. Because that way you're immediately showing people you're a person of action. You're showing yourself as a self-starter, someone that's capable, someone that's willing, and someone that wants to get the job done. Now, this is really important, and I'm going to tell you why. When a company tends to look for people that it's going to lay off, and it's sad that people have been frustrated when they couldn't believe that Mark Zuckerberg and a few other companies like Microsoft said we're laying off low performers. Here's the process when a person is laid off in a company. The manager says, I have to go over how many people, and they look at who's the worst person they have. And they say, this person either is hard to work with, for example, this person doesn't have the skills, this person doesn't get along with the people, and that's the first person they cut. So if you go in there immediately and go in there and show that you want to work with people, and then you're offering help, you're automatically showing that you're going above and beyond what most people won't do. And that way, if you're there for 2 months and all of a sudden the company does a layoff, and it's happened to me, you typically won't be the one laid off. In fact, I can tell you, in one of my first principal architect jobs at Riverstone, I was there for a week and a half, and they announced a 30% layoff. And the VP called me and he said, Michael, you're doing a great job. Your job is protected. I need you to stay focused. And I promise you, you are not going to be laid off. Now, I continued the job. I stayed focused. I thought I'd be getting laid off anyway, but I didn't. The VP was honest with me. So the point is, there is that. And in the beginning, that's your most vulnerable time if there's any challenges in the company. So go out there and prove you're one of those people that wants to go help everybody. Obviously, don't commit to more than what you can do. Now, in these meetings, meet people, talk to people. If you're asked to do something, do it. Do it quickly. Do it with efficiency. Do it with love, and pour your heart into it, and follow up to every conversation. Now, at that point, you're going to be in meetings. And when you're in meetings in your team, this is the way you get noticed by your manager and the team. So typically speaking, you're in a manager, and let's say I'm the manager leading the team, and I say I have this very good voice data and video cloud-based opportunity. Who's interested? And here's what most people do. Kind of hide under the desk, put their hands over their ears and eyes like a dog would do if it didn't want to be seen in a room. And then if you're the one that says, I want this project, automatically you just show that you're someone that's exciting. And why is that a good thing to do again in these rooms? Because who's in a meeting? Management, and the management sees you as a person. So I like to do that, and then I would offer help to people. I'd meet people. I'd take them to lunch. That's the biggest thing. The other things that I would do is I'd ask my manager, what is most important to you? What is your most important goals of the team? And then I would ask how you can help get them there. Any of those three things. And realistically speaking, that's the case. So I kind of hope that helps. Please, feel free to ask more questions. And if anyone has any more questions, please feel free to ask them. Albert, you're working as a Windows Server administrator for 4 years now, and you need to switch to a cloud architect career. Good choice. You already learned and passed the Solutions Architect Associate. What's next? You're going to need cloud architect training. So I want to do a couple things. First thing I want to do is make sure you get access to the ebook that's going to tell you everything you need to learn. Tyrone, could you put a link to the ebook we wrote on how to get your first cloud architect job? Because I really think that's going to actually help you. Now, the next thing that you're going to need to do is learn both the business skills and the leadership skills that are going to be necessary to succeed and do well in the role. And they're a combination of business skills and leadership. And I'm going to give you a list of some of the things that we actually do as architects, because I'm going to tell you, you're not going to get there by learning hands-on IT. And what I mean by this, Albert, and you're not going to get there by just getting certified, but you can get there. So let's say you're done an AWS certification, you passed it, you now know some of those things that AWS actually has. If I were to ask you, by comparison, an organization has a weighted average cost of capital of 7.8%, how would you leverage that information to determine whether you should build that client in OpenStack or Nutanix Cloud versus use a public cloud like AWS or Azure? You're not going to know that unless you're taught. If I were to ask you, how would you design the end-to-end security architecture for a company with 200,000 employees? What do your demilitarized zones need to look like? What's your application security processes that are there? What's your identity strategies going to look like? What is your data loss prevention strategy going to look like? What is your SIEM and event correlation systems going to look like in strategy? What's your security policy that we're going to do? For example, what are the incident response procedures we're going to create? What level of compute do I need? What level? So it gets pretty heavy into the why we're doing things and the business side. The good news is you can do it. And I promise you, you definitely can. And I've taken plenty of sysadmins and trained them for architect jobs. Now, I'm going to actually tell you what we do as architects. I actually wrote down a list of the top 50, and we've got some time, so I'll give you a few. So I want to make sure it makes sense. We will develop and maintain an architectural framework. So most organizations adhere to some form of a framework, like a TOGAF framework or a Zachman framework. We will always be creating technology roadmaps that will be aligned with the organization's business objectives. So in order to increase our sales, we're going to put in this new sales site, create an AI recommendation engine, et cetera. This year, in the next year, we want to have an AI sales agent do this, what have you. We do a lot of analysis of current IT systems and infrastructure. So that means leading a team of engineers to come in and do these things. We're always going to look for areas of improvement in the organization's IT processes and their systems. Maybe it's changes to the network, changes to the data center, changes to the storage, changes to the accelerators and the compute environments. We're always going to be evaluating new and emerging technologies to see what kind of positive impact they can make on our business. We typically develop IT governance policies and procedures. We're collaborating and managing stakeholders to get their business requirements and buy-in. We're aligning IT initiatives and overall business strategy. We're conducting gap analysis between what we have now versus what we need for future, the difference in how to get there to build a plan. We typically oversee systems integration efforts or develop and enforce an architecture standard and best practice. For example, here is our golden image build. This is the golden endpoint protection that's on each thing. These are the packages that have been removed from the system. How would we assess and mitigate IT-related risks? Perform an impact analysis of a various change, whether it be a technology change or a procedural change on the business. Lead an architecture review board where someone wants to make a change and all the key stakeholders look and determine its impact on the business. Developing cost-benefit analysis for saying on IT initiatives. Developing flexibility, scalability, and agility into the systems. Determining what are the appropriate platforms we should even use. Do we make the single cloud, hybrid, multi-cloud like we usually do? What are the vendors involved that we need to deal with? How would we create a disaster recovery plan and a business continuity plan? And that's just some of the things that we actually do. So if I describe those things to you, those are the things you're going to need to learn how to do. And this is, realistically speaking, one of the absolute best careers that I know. And Albert, tomorrow night, if you want, I'm going to be running a presentation, and it's Tyrone, do you have the information for tomorrow night's boot camp? And if not, if you sign up for pretty much any of the webinars tomorrow, you should get it emailed about it anyway. We're going to run a boot camp, me and David Lithicum, and we're going to talk about the cloud architect role, and we're going to talk about the cloud architect skills, and we're going to talk about cloud architect training, and then we're going to talk about how David Lithicum and I train cloud architects when we train them together. in our executive architect training, but no matter what, you'll get a list of things you need to learn. So love you to join that as well. And between that and the free book, you'll have a list. And then you can determine how you want to learn them. You can learn them with us. You can go get an MBA, get an executive coach for certain things. I just want you to know how to become an architect. Because Albert, I'm going to tell you, this is the best job ever. You know, I remember I started, I took the Windows MCSE 4 exams when I started my career and then ultimately went into tech. So I understand Windows Systems Administration fairly well because it was one of those first things that I learned in my life. And it was kind of fun, although I haven't used Windows in ages, so now I'm figuring it out again. But I think you'll really love this job, and I think it'll be well worth it. Zemcan IT, thanks for answering your questions. I'm happy to. Have I ever had to deal with conflict resolution as a disgruntled customer or member in your team as an enterprise architect? I heard you mention EQ over IQ. So the architect job in most cases is definitely a job of more of emotional intelligence than it is IQ or actual intelligence. This is so. So Zam, I'm going to give you some actual statistics. 70 to 80% of the time when you interact with the client as an architect, let's say they already went to the cloud, it didn't work for them. I'm going to say this again. Between 70 and 80% of the time, organizations invest in technology and get zero benefit out of it. 70 to 80% of the time. And why is that? Because an organization says, this is exciting brand new tech. Oh, I got to go and invest in it. And they don't understand the business, and they just try to throw tech at the business without understanding the business process, the business problems, how the tech was going to work, what the tech does. They just deployed it. So that actually means that if you're a new architect and you're consulting with the client the first time, 70 to 80% of the time, they're already going to be upset. Either they're there either the new CIO because the old CIO got fired from a bad decision, or they're the old CIO that's walking around with their tail between their legs because, the last thing went bad and now they're upset with everyone. So, the reality is you're going to deal with a lot of upset clients. And if you do your job right, the ability is to take that frown and turn it into a smile. I'm not sure I can even frown, but you get the point. To take that frown and turn it upside down into a smile. So I can tell you very frequently I walk into a new client, and just when I walk in, I can feel the tension. And I immediately walk in and say, hi, it's Mike. I'm here to help you. Could you tell me what's going on? Could you tell me the situation? Have you had any challenges, pain points? And I listen. And I ask very open-ended questions. And I'm never judgmental about it. And by the time I'm done, I get a lot of information. And when you actually listen to the person and say, okay, yes, I can see where that happened. But you also can acknowledge, yeah, I can see how you've made that decision. Honestly, I've seen about 80% of other CIOs also make this decision. Unfortunately, it didn't work for them either. But you're in good company. These are other good people that have made similar things. It's no big deal. We've helped them and we can help you too. We can remediate this and make you look great. All of a sudden, it kind of changes things. So the answer is, in most cases, when you approach a new client, if you are there brought in like I am, as this executive architect that's going to parachute in and fix something, then you're often going to find yourself there. And for me, I just walk in, I diffuse situations. I don't have any problems with it. Now, with regards to conflict in the team, I personally don't really have a lot of conflict with people in my life. I just don't. I mean, I think a lot of it is because I was trained in healthcare first. And when I was younger, we had to take classes in what was called therapeutic communication that turned out to be emotional intelligence. So generally speaking, I don't often have conflicts with people. I mean, I can think of one or two in the last, say, 25 years, but usually I was able to just talk my way through them and diffuse them, take someone to dinner, drinks, what have you. So there is that. So I have had many times on a team where you have one or two people that kind of hate each other, and you got to make them work together and bring out the best in others. Now, again, that's when you go in there with your emotional intelligence, and you got to bring in both people and talk about shared goals and shared visions and find ways to make them both happy, potentially even make them friends, which I've actually done in the past too. But yeah, again, that you will see. So Zemcan IT, the architect job can pretty much be considered herding cats. When I was at Cisco, that was the manager's job, the architect job. What do? I herd cats. And here's what they actually meant. Cats are very intelligent. Even if you're not a cat person, you have to understand that cats are very smart. Now, one of the things that people don't love about cats is, they're not like a dog. You give a dog a job, the dog's just going to do it. But not the cat. The cat's just as smart as the dog, but the cat does what it feels like when it feels like it. And, Zimcan ID, when we're talking about really good people in technology, like the best of the best, and you're talking about the geniuses, which are what I recommend you get, you're going to be dealing with people that are going to be as unique as cats. I had one guy that would only eat yellow M&Ms, and one girl wore green every single day of the week because she didn't have to think about picking out her clothes each day. And, you meet people that do these things, but when you start getting IQs in the genius range, when they start going over 140, 145, and you're in the 150, 160 range, people become a little unique and eccentric, and they do goofy little things. So those are the wacky people I want on my teams, the really good, smart, capable people that can solve anything. So yes, in those teams, there's going to be a lot of it. One of the things that I can tell you I do on big projects is I try to get some face time. I drive down, I meet with those engineers that are doing the work. I take them to lunches, I take them to dinner, I take them to drinks. I periodically check and see how they're holding up because those engineers work so hard for us in a lot of these projects. If they need something, I go to their manager, get them a day or two off. I do what's necessary to take care of my team. So the better you are as a leader, the better you are at identifying people, negotiating people, bringing out the best and others in them. That's going to be the most important thing for you. So that definitely all a leadership-y, emotional intelligence, finesse job here as an architect, which is one of the reasons it's so good. Because very few people have that finesse. And if you develop it, it can go very far for you. Great questions today. Loving these questions. Tyrone, we can bring in the next one. What certifications would I suggest to do first? The CISSP, the CCSP, or the CISM? Always the CISSP. And here's the thing. If I was only going to do one security certification, it would be the CISSP. And as a general rule, if you gave me two people that I could hire, one person has a CCIE, for example, a Cisco Certified Internet Expert, and the other person has a CompTIA A+, Net+, Security+, Cloud+, CCNA, CCNP, and AWS Solutions Architect Associate, I'd still hire the CCIE. And the reason I'd hire the CCIE is the CCIE is so big and so hard that the person in the CCIE has to pretty much pour their heart and soul into something for a year, which typically means to me they're the hiring manager, which means they're the most, as the hiring manager, that's the most passionate, that they're willing to go above and beyond, and they're intelligent, they can learn it and will do it, and they have the motivation to do so. Now, the reason I say the CCIE is the CCIE is probably the best certification in the world. It's also probably the hardest certification in the world. And for some reason, the CISSP holds almost as much value. And I can tell you firsthand, the CISSP is no joke of a certification, but it's about 10% of the difficulty to pass the CCIE. And it receives the most, it receives about as much value in the industry, which is why in Tyrone, if you want to pop that link to that video, that's why I said the CISSP may be the best ROI in certifications. And I know people like R, for example, that we train. Now, R had good architecture skills. R never worked in tech. He was an immigrant, actually, and got his first job as a security architect in a very large organization. And it's interesting, you know, the only certification he had security-wise was the CISSP. Of course, he did have a solutions architect professional. I think he did the TOGAF 10 with us, but he was one of our many people that have gotten security architect jobs. I can get someone a security architect job with the right training and a CISSP. Assuming that, and I could honestly get people a security architect job with no certification, with the right training. But the CISSP is very helpful. So the CISSP is the gold. And you can consider the other ones like the bronze and silver medals. They're still good. You have one of all three, you look great, but you still, the gold medal is the one that matters the most. And that's some really good questions you gave me today. So honestly, I think we will close here unless another question pops in the next 30 seconds. But I want to remind everybody that about a couple of things. Tomorrow we're going to have our so it looks like there's a question from Elijah. Elijah says, I'm going to take the opportunity to ask more while you're here, please. Well, being in the on-demand, can you still add the team-based architecture experience from Go Cloud Careers? Well, you'll be able to document some architectures that you actually have done, Elijah. Meaning there will be some architectures that you actually do when you turn in architectural. So them you could talk about. But the team architectures are different. So in a live class, I actually go out there and, I might issue an RFP in the class and the students in the class are designing it. And then they have to design it and they have to present it back and sell it to me. That is the team architecture project that's going on. But there are other architecture projects that you could do that you could definitely put there that would still be completely appropriate. So I kind of hope that helps. But as long as you're doing things in there, there's a lot of things that you can realistically do that you can put down on there that should be spelled out in the program. But the team project, not if you're not working with a team and designing these team projects together. I hope that makes sense, Elijah. Because we want to keep your resume honest and ethical and authentic because it really does matter when we read it from the perspective of the hiring manager. So I'd like to close on this and say that tomorrow we have a completely free webinar on how to become a cybersecurity architect. And please join us on it. It is going to be something that I'm excited about. It's taken many of us an entire year of time to put this together. And of course, we had decades of security architecture experience before we even put this together. So this is something I'm incredibly proud of. Tomorrow night, we've got another webinar with me and David Lithicum, and it's talking about not just getting your first architect job, but also developing the skills to move into your principal and distinguished and executive architect roles. That's tomorrow night with David Lithicum and I. And of course, next week, we have a completely free Certified Information Security Manager Bootcamp live on YouTube. Please sign up for that now. And if you had a good time in today's video, please give it a like. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell to be notified of new videos to assist you in your technology career. This is Mike Gibbs signing off for now, and I can't wait to meet you very soon. Take care, everyone.